Hello, Assalamu alaikum. Thank you, sir, for joining us today and sharing all this
Alaikum salam.
information. I have a question about the current Islamic government of Afghanistan. How we can convince them to believe in democracy, and how we can convince them to allow women in the decision making of government in different aspects. Thank you.
Assalamu alaikum, sir. I'm Naveen from Jalalabad, Afghanistan. My first question was asked by Batul, so I have two questions. First of all, as an advocate like you, we are counting on you that, as you said, there is a lot of extremism in Muslim world. So what are people like you doing to counter this extremism? And if ever any government had approached you to deliver such a lecture to the students who are students of madrasas, because madrasa is the main place where the most of the extremism coming from. And my second question, most majority opinion, it is the popular opinion in Muslim world, that the extremism in Muslim world is being like induced by the West. So how, what do you think about this? What is your opinion?
Okay, the last question by the Qari Rahim Gul. Okay.
السلام عليكم اهلا وسهلا يا اخي الكريم.
وعليكم السلام.
موجود معنا نحن زاد فرحان. اخي الكريم، انت تكلمت في الديمقراطيه في جمهوريه. لازم انت نفرات ياتيك دعوه لطالبان، شباب طالبان، او انتم نفرات مثلا هذه الاشخاص لازم يجي لافغانستان. واحد تمثيل في العرب اخلاق في اثنين شكل. واحد شكل يجي من طرف الله، واحد يجي من يأخذ نفرات من إنسان. مثلا كيف شكل في جمهورية ديمقراطية يجي في تونس، كيف في مراكش، كيف الجزائر، كيف في عمان، كيف في باكستان. لازم أخي الكريم أنت نفرات يجي لأفغانستان زي مساعدة لطالبان. نحن موجودين في الحرب، نحن ما يعرف في جمهورية. كل نفرات يجي زعلان من طالبان، حتى طالبان شباب طالبان زعلان من علماء الإسلام. وما سويت تعليم لهذا الشكل. الآن أنتم نفرات شو سوي لهذا؟ لازم هذه نحن أيضا يجي في فرحان ديمقراطية جمهورية تيجي في أفغانستان.
Sir, you can respond both of three questions and then we will go to another question.
Thank you very much. I think the three questions are very similar. It's about how we can convince Taliban about democracy. Of course, it's not easy. It's not easy. I think we need to engage with them in a dialogue. I think that the occupation of the United States or the occupation of Afghanistan by the United States, I think was a mistake. And I think when any country is occupied by another country, their first reaction is to fight back, to liberate their country. So I, as an American citizen, I'm Tunisian, but also American citizen, I was against the occupation of Afghanistan. And I am against the occupation, I was against the occupation of Iraq. You don't bring democracy under occupation. That is not possible, because when there is occupation, people fight back. That is a natural instinct, whether it's religious or nationalist or patriotic. People don't want to be occupied by another country. Okay, so now Afghanistan is free from occupation. This is good. Alhamdulillah. This is, I think, a very good step in the right direction. Now Afghanistan is free, is no longer under occupation. We have to solve our differences peacefully. Right now, Taliban might be the strongest group, but we can talk with them and we can convince them that there are other groups, that there are other parties, and that many of these other parties are also Islamic, but they have different opinions. So it is important that we explain to them that they are not the only Islamic party. They are not the only party that have the right to speak for Islam. They have their opinions, which we respect. We might disagree with them, but they are entitled to their opinion. As long as we solve our problems through peaceful means. Let's agree, no violence, no killing each other, no fighting each other. Let's agree to solve our problems with dialogue, with peaceful means. I think even the Taliban will realize, maybe some scholars will go to them. I visited many countries. I visited Nigeria, for example, many times, and I talked with religious leaders in Nigeria who are also very, very strict. But we talked about democracy, and we tried to explain to them that democracy is compatible with Islam. I went to Iran. I went to the Philippines. So I'm not alone. Of course, there are many other scholars of Islam who can visit Afghanistan. And I'll be happy to visit Afghanistan or Pakistan in the future. And let's have a discussion. Let's have a dialogue. They can present their views, but we can bring other scholars and also present different views. And let's have a dialogue. Let's learn to live in peace and respect each other. I think they will change their mind, and I think they will understand that Islam is not rigid. Islam is flexible. Islam is tolerant. Women have rights in Islam. You cannot, in the name of Islam, take away the rights of women. That is not Islam. Women are half the society. If half the society are not educated, how can you educate or modernize your country or develop your country if half the population is not educated? You know, so we can convince them. And I think the Taliban are going to see that while fighting against the occupation was easy, building a new country is not easy. They are going to face a lot of challenges. How to modernize Afghanistan, how to build an educational system, how to maintain the health system. They will see that it's not easy, and hopefully over a period of time, they will understand that they need to be more flexible and that they need to be tolerant of different opinions, different schools of thought, and that violence is not the way, that dialogue is better, and that democracy is compatible with Islam because we are all Muslim. We don't have anybody who wants to do something against Islam, but we have different interpretations of Islam. So I think we can talk to them, and we can have a dialogue with them, and hopefully we can convince them slowly to become more tolerant and to allow other voices. There is diversity of voices. There is diversity of opinions within Islam. From the time, as I said, from the time of the Prophet ﷺ, even the Sahaba had different opinions. And then we have different schools of thought, the different ayyimah, different madahib, different this. This shows you that there is tolerance and that there is no one who can claim to represent Islam. There are opinions. So is extremism induced by the West? No, I don't think so. But indirectly it is. Why? Because the West often supports dictatorship. This is my problem with the US foreign policy or with the West foreign policy. In the name of fighting extremism or in the name of providing stability in Tunisia or in Egypt or in many countries in the Arab world and the Muslim world, the West often supports dictators and supports tyrants and oppressors. And that is one of the main reasons why we have extremism. Extremism, in my opinion, mostly comes as a reaction to dictatorship, as a reaction to oppression. When people have no voice, when people are not allowed to participate in a dialogue, in a civilized dialogue, or to express their opinion, then sometimes they resort to violence because they are losing hope. they don't see any other ways of solving the problem other than resorting to violence. So I think that the West, by mistake, by supporting the dictators, which I think is a mistake, is indirectly creating an atmosphere that encourages extremism in many countries in the Arab and the Islamic world. And what I've been advocating here in the United States is that the United States has to support democracy. And the United States and Europe have to stop supporting dictators, whoever is. The United States should not choose the winners or the leaders of any country. The leaders and the winners have to be chosen by the people. And the United States should build good relations with the people and let the people choose. And if they choose Taliban, okay, fine, that's their right. But it has to be done in a free way, and it has to be done in a democracy that respects the rights of the minorities. If you win an election, it doesn't mean that you have the right to put your opponents in jail or to prevent them from speaking up or from organizing or having meetings or talking or having newspapers and media, because they have rights too. You won and you are the government. It doesn't mean you have to silence everybody else and rule by dictatorship. I am against dictatorship, but the worst kind of dictatorship is dictatorship in the name of Islam. Why? Because it hurts Islam. It gives Islam a bad name. I don't like any kind of dictatorship, but to me, secular dictatorship is better than dictatorship in the name of Islam, because dictatorship in the name of Islam hurts the religion, hurts the credibility of the religion. We don't want anybody to be a dictator in the name of Islam. Islam is a tolerant religion. Islam is a peaceful religion. Islam is for love and harmony between brothers and sisters, not for dictatorship. If they want to be a dictator against Islam, that's fine. We can fight them, but don't be a dictator by imposing Islam on people. لا إكراه في الدين. There is no compulsion in religion. Religion has to be a matter of choice. People either believe in it or not, and they have to be free to believe. You cannot impose belief. Belief comes from the heart. وَمَنْ شَاءَ فَلْيُؤْمِنْ وَمَنْ شَاءَ فَلْيَكْفُرْ. But it comes from the heart. People have to believe in their heart. So the government has no business imposing on people to believe in something if they don't believe in it. The government can try maybe to educate them, but not to impose on them to believe. You cannot do it. It can never be done. So we have to learn from our experiences of other Muslim countries, but also from the experiences of non-Muslim countries. We have to learn from humanity. Humanity is facing the same problems. The dictatorship was a problem everywhere. In Chile, in Latin America, in Eastern Europe, in many countries, they had to fight against dictatorship, and they established a democracy. And now it's our job in our Muslim countries, in our Arab countries, to fight against dictatorship. And inshallah, we will defeat the dictatorship. And we will have a tolerant society where there is Taliban, like everybody else. They have the right to exist if they don't use violence, if they have their own opinion. But there are other views too, and there are other opinions too. And let's have a dialogue. That's how we can resolve our differences. Let's have a dialogue about what is Islam and what does it mean to rule according to Islam. What does it mean? Let's have a dialogue about these things.
Yeah, this is the final question, I think, because the time, we have very limited time. So, Muhammad Jilani, please, you can ask.
Assalamu alaikum, sir. This is Muhammad Jilani. This is Muhammad Jilani from Afghanistan. Sir, my question is this: that in your initiative speech, you stated that Mujahideen defeated Russia, but Taliban started fighting war against the Mujahideen, despite they were both Muslims. What was a huge reason behind this? And the second question is this: that what do you think international community will recognize the Taliban government under what circumstances? And the last question is this, that it's not question, but a message for the young Afghans in this tough situation. What should they do? Thank you so much.
Yeah. Yeah.
Sir, my question is that we see that the Muslim countries, they have their own Islamic, like organization of Islamic countries. So why did not the Muslim countries, they did not played their role in the development of Afghanistan? Like why they did not convince the Taliban that we are following the same Islam? So why don't you follow us, like all the other Muslim countries that they are following?
This is the last question.
Assalamu alaikum, sir. Aqila from Ghazni, Afghanistan. My question is that, as you discussed in your topic, that Islamic countries mostly there are violence and war. I totally agree with that. And also in Tunisia, they transfer the Ennahda to a democratic system. And so, what challenges the Tunisian government and also the people they are facing while transforming? Thank you.
Sir, I need like your response on the one is very common narrative in Pakistan and Afghanistan regarding the Muslim brotherhood, Ikhwan al-Muslimin. Some of the Islamists says that we follow the democracy in Egypt, but the international establishment are not ready to accept the democratic model from the Muslim community or Muslim countries. And the second one is your last response on what are the key reasons why democracy is not centered in the Muslim countries. What are the basic reasons behind that? We see the Tunisia, and you mentioned that, and the same problem that we are seeing now in the Malaysia. And you say the Afghanistan is, the same system in Pakistan, or are struggling, but still there is a lot of issues we are facing. Thank you.
Thank you. So the first question from, I think, Brother Muhammad Jilani, I didn't say the Taliban fighting the mujahideen. I said even before the Taliban was created, the mujahideen were fighting each other. I think for at least 6 or 7, maybe 8 years. The Taliban did not even exist. The mujahideen, the 6 mujahideen parties and groups that defeated the Soviet Union could not agree on how to govern, on one government. All of them wanted to govern at the same time, and they started fighting each other. So this problem is not only Taliban. I just want to be clear that there is this idea that some extremists or some even mujahideen who have good intentions, they think that they have the right to govern even without elections, even without winning in an election, just because they represent Islam. They are the mujahideen and they defeated the Soviet Union, therefore they have the right to govern. But there are 6 of them, it's not just one. And so each one of them wanted to govern, and they started fighting amongst each other. So even before the Taliban, the mujahideen fought each other for at least 6 or 7 years in Afghanistan. And then the Taliban came. I think they were trained in Pakistan, but they were funded by Saudi Arabia and by the United States because they wanted to create an alternative to the mujahideen who were fighting each other. Of course, Taliban did not bring a good alternative. They were able to defeat the mujahideen and to govern, but then they governed very badly. And they did not respect the rights of the people, and they couldn't solve the economic or social problems of the country. And then they created, even more violence and more extremism. So, what will it take for the international community to recognize the Taliban? I think if the Taliban try to build a tolerant society, a democratic society that respects Islamic values, I think the international community will respect that and will support that. But it has to be two things. It has to be tolerant of different opinions, and it has to be democratic in the sense that it respects the right of women, it respects the rights of minorities, whether they are Muslim or non-Muslim, and it protects the human rights of people. And including in that, of course, you have free and fair elections and so on. And if the Taliban move in that direction, I think that the international community will recognize them and will support them, because I don't think the international community wants to see Afghanistan in chaos. They would like to see Afghanistan stable and prosperous. And even if Taliban are winning the majority or they're governing, it's fine. But there are minimum requirements of human rights, of democracy, of respecting the different opinions and respecting the citizens. And if they go in that direction, I think they will be recognized and they will be supported. Why did Muslim countries not intervene to help Afghanistan? Because, my sister, I told you, we have dictatorships in the Muslim countries. And the rulers in Muslim countries are not concerned about what's happening in Afghanistan. The people are concerned, but not the rulers. The rulers only care about themselves. And that's why the Arab League or the Association of Islamic Countries has never done anything good, not for Afghanistan, not even for Palestine, nor for Iraq, nor for any country, because they are a league of dictatorships. And dictatorships, by definition, care only about one thing, which is staying in power. They don't care about anything else. So we cannot expect Muslim countries to be united and to defend and help each other until we have real democracies. Why? Because then the government works for the people. Then the government represents the people and is accountable to the people. And if they don't go and help Muslims in Afghanistan or the Uyghur in China or in Burma or any country, it will become their duty to help them. Because if they don't do it, the people will vote against them and they will lose in the next election. That's how we create. That's what democracy means. It means we have accountable government. But in a dictatorship, the government is not accountable to the people. They can do whatever they want. And therefore, they don't care. They don't care about Afghanistan or about Iraq, Muslims in China or Burma, because they're dictatorship. So that's why I think dictatorship is. If we want to become united, if we want to become strong and help each other like Muslims should be, we have to help each other and we have to be united. Then we need democracy, we need governments that are accountable to their people. So what challenges while transforming? That's a really good question. It's hard. The democratic transitions, if we look at any country, Muslim or even non-Muslim, an Arab or non-Arab, that went through a democratic transition usually takes at least 20 years, and maybe longer, maybe 25, maybe 30 years. It's a long process. It's a whole system of government that has to be changed, but also a culture of tolerance, a culture of dialogue, a culture of respecting other opinions, even if we disagree with them. This takes time, and that's why democratic transitions usually take at least 20 years, maybe 30 years, to really be a democracy. It does not happen overnight. I mean, it's a process, and it takes time. First, you have to make the laws, like the Constitution and the laws, but the laws don't mean anything if the people don't believe in them. Because you cannot enforce the laws if the people don't understand the laws and don't defend the laws and don't respect the laws without having a policeman punishing them if they don't respect the laws. So it's a whole culture of citizenship. People have to become citizens. And when they become citizens and they feel like citizens, they defend the laws. They defend their country and they implement the laws even when there is no policeman, because they are convinced that the laws are good for them, and because they contributed in passing those laws, and they believe in respecting the laws and the system of the government. That's why the transition from dictatorship to democracy takes time. It takes at least 20 and perhaps 30 years. We have to be patient. There is no magic wand, but it's a culture. Democracy is not just these institutions and elections, it's also a culture. We need to build a culture of democracy, a culture of tolerance, a culture that if I disagree with you, it doesn't mean that I'm your enemy or that you're my enemy. We can disagree respectfully and still be brothers and sisters and still be good Muslims, and we can resolve our differences without fighting and without killing each other. This takes time. About the Muslim Brotherhood or Islamic parties in general, and why it's not accepted in the West. To be honest, I think that the West is divided. The West is divided on this issue, even in America and even in Europe. There are people who don't want to see democracy in the Arab world or in the Muslim world, in America and in Europe, either because they don't think that we are capable of becoming true Democrats, or because they think that democracy is not in their interest. They would rather govern with dictators who are helping them or serving their interests. So I think the West are divided, but there is a large number of people in the West who do believe in democracy and who are accepting that Islamic parties have to play part. They understand that you cannot really build a democracy in Tunisia, for example, and exclude Ennahda, or you cannot build a democracy in Egypt and exclude the Muslim Brotherhood. It's impossible. These movements represent at least 30% of the population. How can you build a democracy if you exclude 30% of the population? By definition, you become a dictatorship. So we have, just like we have to convince the Taliban in Afghanistan that democracy is compatible with Islam and is good for them and good for the country, we also have to convince many American and European and Western policymakers that democracy is good for them. That democracy in the Arab world and in the Muslim world is good for them, is good for their interests too, that supporting dictators and dictatorships in the Arab world and Muslim world is not good for them. This is against their interest. This will destabilize the whole region. This is not good for America to be supporting dictators like Sisi in Egypt or anybody else in the Arab world or Muslim world. I think America is changing. I think they're starting to become convinced. But the Islamic movements, whether the Muslim Brotherhood or Ennahda or others, also have to prove themselves, have to prove that they are real Democrats, and that when they come to power, they will not take away the rights of those who disagree with them, whether they are Muslim or non-Muslim, and whether they are Islamic or non-Islamic, like secular, for example. That the secular people are also citizens, and they have the same rights. And we have to protect those rights, and we have to defend those rights. So it's a test for the West to prove that they really believe in democracy, but it's also a test for Islamic movements and for the Muslims in general to prove that they also believe in democracy and that they are also capable of implementing real and true democracy. It's a test for both of us. And I think we are learning. I think we are at a very difficult time right now, but I think we are learning from those mistakes. And I think the Muslims all over the Arab and the Muslim world are learning that democracy is the best solution, and that we need to build a tolerant society, and we need to be more tolerant of each other and of different opinions. Differences is good. Differences gives you strength. But we have to learn how to live with differences and not accuse each other of treason or not being a good Muslim only because we disagree. So it's a learning curve. It's a learning process for the West, which also sometimes makes a lot of mistakes, but also for us in the Islamic world to prove that we are capable of building real democracies.
Thank you, sir. It's our pleasure to attend this very wonderful session. And now I will ask to the vote of thanks and closing remarks for the democracy and especially the civic education in Pakistan and Afghanistan. He did a lot of work, and now recently he is a consultant of National Endowment Fund for Democracy at Pakistan. So he will share his closing remarks. And sir, we expect you next time more session from you and such type of dialogues in Pakistan. And we are really interested to invite you to Pakistan and share your thoughts on parliamentarian, religio-political parties and youth and including academia. So it should be very helpful. And we planned many times, but because of last 2 years, because of COVID-19, we resumed our activities and close all this system. But now it's opening, so we are trying to arrange a visit, and also we are interested to organize an exchange program between Pakistani religio-political parties and Tunisian, especially Ennahda. And we are really interested to know much more about that model. Thank you very much. Over to you, Zafrullah Khan.
Assalamu alaikum, and from Pakistan it is almost good afternoon, but Radwan Masmoudi, good to see you through technology. We were colleagues in steering committee of World Movement for Democracy till last meeting, and if you recall, we had a joint session in World Assembly in Indonesia, where we discussed the topics, similar topics, and it is really pleasure to that you have been generous to share your knowledge, your ideas, and your analysis of the Muslim world from a democratic lens. And I'm equally pleased that this conversation is happening with our friends from Afghanistan, who are facing the critical choices and critical times. Of course, there is no one model of democracy. Every country has to evolve, but the evolution process should also be democratic. This is my contention. There should be no walk-in revolutions with guns and all. Because democracy as a product is there, but how you manufacture that product, that process is equally important. It is my pleasure on behalf of the organizers, IRCRA, they are trying to expand the frontiers of dialogue to the emerging and democracies facing challenges within the Muslim world, and I hope a collaboration between Center of the Study of Islam and Democracy and IRCRA and even Islamic Ideology Council here will be a good omen to at least embark on debates where we can democratically discuss the ideas. So it is my privilege and pleasure to extend a vote of thanks on behalf of Professor Dr. Qibla Ayaz, who had to leave for another conference, and of course the organizers. Technology is wonderful. We, of course, I would love to see you in person, but at least technology made it possible to have this wonderful conversation. Stay blessed.
Alhamdulillah. Thank you very much. Thank you. Also, I want to thank you all for inviting me. I really enjoyed our discussion. I wish you the best in Pakistan, and especially to our brothers and sisters in Afghanistan. Inshallah, they will take this opportunity to build a new nation that reflects the true values of Islam, of tolerance, of peace, of prosperity. That will be good news for them, but also good news for all of us, inshallah. And we will try to help you in any way we can, inshallah.
Thank you, sir. Jazakallah khairan. Thank you all.
Thank
Thank you, our colleagues who are joining us.
Thank you. Assalamu alaikum. Thank you very much.